Hi, Zach Reiser here, and welcome back to another Effects Pedal demo. Today, we are going to be getting into not one, not two, not three, but four of the new versions of some of Strymon's classic pedals. So specifically today, we're going to be getting into the Flint, which is a dual pedal. It's like a half tremolo, half reverb. The BlueSky, which is one of their classic mini reverb pedals. The unforgettable L Cap, one of my all-time favorite delay pedals, incredible tape-style delays here. And then the Dig, which is kind of a dual digital style delay. Now, except for the L Cap, I have not done full reviews on any of these Strymon pedals before. I have done a very thorough deep dive into the El Capistan, but today we're going to be kind of doing broad overviews of just different sounds and colors we can get from all these pedals. One thing I really like about the small box Strymon pedals is they are very simple to dial in really good sounds. It's not a lot of menu diving. There are secondary functions, but you don't really need them. They're just to kind of fine-tune the sound that you're looking for. So we're just going to kind of show off a broad spectrum of what these things can do today. Couple quick notes though. These are the brand new version 2's from Strymon. They basically re-released all of their small box pedals that they've had out for a while in this kind of updated form factor. This across the board does a couple things. One, it gives you MIDI access to essentially every parameter, which is quite huge. So if you had a DAW or a powerful MIDI controller plugged into these, you could move all the knobs with MIDI. You could control the sound on sound looper on the El Cap, for instance, with MIDI, turn them off, save presets, etc. Very big upgrade. Now, if you don't have a 1/4-inch adapter, you can use something like this, which Strymon makes. This is essentially going to turn 5-pin DIN MIDI into 4 1/4-inch out MIDI, so that you could take your MIDI controller and plug it into these pedals directly because they don't have 5-pin DIN MIDI. So 2 other big upgrades across the board for all the V2's. They now all have an analog JFET input stage, which gives you a very kind of clean, dynamic, pristine signal that goes into the processor section. And then speaking of the processor, they also have new ARM DSP processors. So you have a more powerful processor to kind of make these reverbs and delays and everything sound more realistic, more particulate, more dynamic. Couple other little notes about the V2's. They all have dedicated switches on the back now to immediately switch from a mono or a stereo input. I am running a mono instrument, obviously, but I am running all of these in stereo, so they're all going into each other and then out into my mixing console in stereo, so headphones would be good if you want to hear those nuances. And then also, we have some new features on all of the pedals, and I'll kind of go over the couple small things they've added to all the pedals. Starting with the El Cap, they have added a dedicated knob for the spring reverb. I really like this because the spring reverb in the El Cap was an incredibly good sounding reverb, and it was a little annoying to have to go into the secondary function to get to it. So now we have it right on the surface. Same thing with the Dig. We now have a tone control right on the surface, so we can sculpt the kind of filtering that happens on the delays right from the surface of the pedal. On the Flint, they have a new secondary function that allows you to change the pre-delay of the reverb, which was not on there originally. And then on the BlueSky, awesome feature, dedicated shimmer knob. And the shimmer now has different aspects depending on which reverb mode you're in. So it's not just a static octave up shimmer anymore. So that is enough talking. Let's finally jump into some sounds. I'm going to start with my bass, dry mostly. I'll combine them a little bit here and there. I also have some other effects on this board that I will use with these. But let's start with the one that I've spent the most time with, which is the El Cap. So we have all kinds of different modes on here, but let's start with just a simple fixed tape head mode. We got a little bit of tape age and wow and flutter going on, and some of that spring reverb turned on. So one of my favorite things about the El Cap, it's a very unique thing that the El Cap does, that they somehow found a way to allow you to just skate right on that line of oscillation, and it never really gets out of hand. And it's a gorgeous sound. And then the way that they handle the tape speed changing is so organic and so natural. I love the El Cap. Switching over to the multi-head delay here for kind of some rhythmic pick action. Switching sounds up a little bit here, I got my Boss OC2 into a BEAD fuzz pedal for this kind of synthy, brassy bass sound. And let's run that into multi-tap mode C. Switching things over to the sound on sound looper setting in the single tape head mode. This is just a fun way to kind of build up some ambience in the background. I don't want to spend an insane amount of time on any one pedal because honestly, it's just going to be an incredibly long video if I do that. So we're going to move on from the L cap. As I said before, I have done a full demo of this one as well. So if you want more examples of the L cap, there's plenty of that on my channel. But we're going to move on to one I've never played with before, which is the Flint. Now, the Flint is really two pedals in one. It's a tremolo on the left side and a reverb on the right side. And you have the option of if you want to run the reverb into the tremolo or the tremolo into the reverb, which is a very cool feature that they give you. But let's start with just the tremolo to begin. There's three options of tremolo. There's a harmonic tremolo, which is one of my favorite styles of tremolo. It's almost more of like a mixture between amplitude modulation and phase modulation. And then the 63 tube is more of your traditional kind of soft-edged tremolo. And then the 65 photocell is going to be your hard, choppy tremolo, starting with the harmonic trem. Same exact settings, but now on the 63 tube. This will be more of your traditional soft tremolo. And then moving to the photocell, which is going to be, again, that choppy style tremolo. In particular, I love choppy tremolos with more synth-style bass sound, so we're going to go Boss OC2 into that bead fuzz again. This time I'm also going to add on my Moog low-pass filter to get this very kind of classic sub-synth style sound. This is what it sounds like, those three pedals without the Flint. and now into that choppy photocell style tremolo. Switching off the tremolo and going to the reverb side, we essentially have three different styles of reverb. The top, the 60s, is going to be a spring style reverb. The one in the middle is going to be kind of a plate style reverb, and the one on the bottom is going to be more like an 80s style Hall DSP reverb. So they're all kind of what you would expect. They're not going to be crazy reverbs, but they all sound lovely. So starting with the spring, I'm just going to cycle through all three here. Now, these are all more straight-ahead reverbs, like I said, but especially on the Hall, if you crank the decay and crank the mix, you can still get into that lovely washed-out ambient territory. Now, as I said before, the Flint gives you the option of running the reverbs into the tremolo or the tremolo into the reverb. Right now, I have the reverbs running into the tremolo. So I'm going to go back to my synth-based sound here, Boss OC2 BEAD Fuzz Moog low pass filter. Again, that sounds like this. Let's put it into that 63 tube style tremolo. And now we're going to run the kind of plate style 70s reverb into that tremolo. The cool thing about running reverbs into tremolos is obviously the tail of the reverb gets volume amplitude modulation happening here. So you get this kind of cool decaying sound as it goes away rather than it just decaying into a big room. Let's hear a little bit more of that. Let's do it on the choppy photocell style one. And now just to hear a little bit of the other version, I've flipped it so that the tremolo is going into the reverb. So you can hear there a vastly different sound running the tremolo into the reverb versus the reverb into the tremolo. It's very cool that the Flint gives you the option to do both, because otherwise you would have had to have two separate pedals and then literally physically flip the order of them on your board. So Flint is pretty straightforward. Let's move on to the Dig. So this is kind of, like I said, a dual digital kind of 80s style rack delay unit here. So we have two very clean and pristine delay lines with their own choice of subdivisions and then their own kind of blend controls over here on the right. Couple little notes about these switches at the top because I'm not going to play with them a whole lot. We have different amounts of modulation from no modulation to light and deep modulation on the delay line. And then we have different types of delay here. Type, though, is really more quality. So 2496 is going to be like super modern, crystal clear, pristine digital delay. And that 12-bit, for instance, on the bottom is going to be more of like an 80s style, kind of a little more saturated is the wrong word, but just not as clean and clear digital style delay. So starting with a delay with no modulation and super clean, pristine 2496 type here, this is just a quarter note and a dotted eighth note here running in parallel, meaning that in one ear is one delay and in one ear is the other delay. Let's try some different subdivisions out on the second tap. So instead of a dotted eighth, we'll do a dotted quarter note. Now, one thing that they give you on the Dig that is awesome, kind of like how on the Flint they give you the option of running one thing into another or the other way around. On the Dig, they give you 3 different routing options for both delays. So we're going to go into the secondary features here, which allows me to also show off how they've changed the way you handle secondary functions. So the way we get to the secondary functions on the V2 pedals is we just hold down the bypass foot switch until both lights start flashing, and now we are in secondary mode, or live edit function, I think is what they call it now in the manual. But what this allows us to do is we can change all of the secondary parameters at the same time. We don't have to hold anything down. We can kind of audition them as we turn the knobs, etc. And then when you want to go back to your main settings, you just click the bypass foot switch again. So far, I have been running the Dig 100% in parallel mode, meaning yet again that both delays are running at the same time, separately from each other, one on the left, one on the right. So this is your dotted eighth and quarter note again in parallel mode. And this would be a good time to put headphones on or good studio monitors to hear the stereo image. Now, if we turn this mix knob, we can go to a ping pong mode. So now they're going to be bouncing back and forth left to right on every single tap. So hopefully you can hear there, it's basically going left, right, etc., instead of 2 separate things on one side of your head or the other. And then finally, we have series mode, which is kind of what the L cap is doing when it's running multi-tap, but this is running one delay tap directly into the next delay line, so you get more of this kind of cascaded style delay, so they start to smear together in the repeats. Moving on from the lovely digital repeats of the Dig, we are going to get into the BlueSky. The BlueSky, honestly, I'm amazed I've never played with before. Like I said, this thing has been around for a long time, and it has been a favorite on a lot of people's pedal boards. It was kind of one of the first kind of small box reverbs that really blew people away. It was also one of the first reverbs to really kind of have that classic shimmer sound in the background. Again, they've kind of upped it a little bit by having a dedicated shimmer knob with different shimmer settings depending on what reverb mode you're in. BlueSky, pretty simple pedal. It's basically just a reverb with delay length. You can control the low and high dampening of the reverb, the mix, and the shimmer, and then also the pre-delay. For now, I'll just leave the pre-delay kind of right in the middle, and we'll put the delay up at the top. So let's hear what the different delay modes sound like. We have plate, room, and spring. Now, I will say that it says room, and it does great room reverbs, but if you're wondering where the hall is, in my opinion, the room reverb is like any size of room, because you can crank it up and it gets into these massive kind of cavernous hall reverbs on the room setting. I always really enjoy plate reverbs for kind of some soloing tones, so I have a little bit of overdrive on from my Way Huge Pork and Pickle. It sounds like this. And let's run that into a little bit more extreme plate reverb with some more extreme modulation. Switching over to room, you can of course get your small rooms if you would like. That would sound something like this. Making it a little bit larger, a little bit bigger pre-delay. Let's hear what that sounds like. Throw an Octaver on just for fun. OC2. As I said before, don't be confused by the word room, because if you crank this decay parameter way up, you get into basically big hall reverbs here. So let's hear what that sounds like with just a little bit of pre-delay. Let's get a little bit ambient here with this big hall sound. I have just my BEAD fuzz pedal on here, so with that by itself, it sounds like this. Nice Brassmaster style fuzz. And now we're going to run this into the big hall style reverb on the room setting here, playing with my volume knob a little bit just to get some swells. And then finally, I'm not going to show this off too much, but we have a spring reverb. We also, of course, had a spring reverb on the L cap and also a spring reverb on the Flint. So a lot of spring reverb going around here. But let's hear what these settings sound like on the spring. Now, as I stated before, one really cool new addition on the version 2 of the BlueSky is that the shimmer knob is right here on the front, so we can control the amount of shimmer very quickly and easily, but also the intervals inside that feedback loop are different depending on which reverb algorithm you're on. So when you're on the plate, it's the classic octave up style shimmer. When you're on the room, it's an octave and a fifth, a little bit more kind of dense sounding chord. And then when you're on spring, it's actually an octave down with a tremolo built in. It's kind of cool. So starting on the plate, I'll just bring in and out the shimmer at will. Let's compare that to the room's octave and a fifth version. Now, of course, this shimmer is on a knob, which means you could control it with an expression pedal. You could control it via MIDI, so you could have these kind of swelling shimmer effects. And I'll just demonstrate what that would sound like by using my hand. Sorry. And then lastly, we have the downward octave with a tremolo on the spring setting. Would be cooler, I feel like, on guitar or a higher pitched instrument, because when you start going down an octave, it's a little tricky, but I'll play up on the neck. We'll also play with my fuzz pedal, which sounds pretty rad with this setting as well. So here is the spring reverb's shimmer. While we're here, same kind of bass synth sound into the Room's version of Shimmer. Same settings, but into the Plates version. Hopefully by now you have a good idea of what all four of these sound like kind of in your setup or what they could bring to the table. Let's do some combinations of a couple here. So I'm going to take a nice fixed head tape delay from the L cap, and then we're going to add on some of that shimmering plate on top of it. So starting with just the L cap. Another thing I love to do when I have two delays on my board is combine them to get even more kind of rich rhythmic textures. So I have these tapped into the same tempo. Again, these are fully MIDI controllable. So if you had something like this conduit, for instance, and a MIDI controller, you could have MIDI clock being sent to all of these. So your tremolos, your delays, everything would be clocked together. But for now, I'm just tapping it in. So now I have different delay subdivisions going on both the L cap and the dig. There are also different styles of delay yet again. So the dig is much cleaner and brighter than the L cap, which will change the color over time. And then I'll add a nice kind of washy room reverb on at the end just to kind of give it some extra ambience. I wasn't sure if I was going to do this in this video, but why not? So as people who have been watching my channel have maybe noticed, I've been getting more and more into synthesis gear and buying lots of synthesizers, modular and not modular. So I thought I'd show a couple sounds with this gorgeous Moog Matriarch that is sitting behind me, just to hear what like pure analog oscillators sound like into these Strymon pedals. Starting with a very simple sound on the Matriarch, this is just a bunch of pure saw waves into a little bit of filter modulation. It sounds like this by itself. And now let's run it into that harmonic tremolo and hall reverb on the Flint. Now, if we want to take this kind of to the next ambient or thick lush level, let's add one little single delay line from the L cap and a little spring reverb just to add kind of an overall wetness to everything. So pretty simple patch here. Again, this is just a couple square waves running in mono mode through the arpeggiator, and I just want to use the dig here as basically a stereo widener. So you'll hear when I turn the dig on, it'll go from being straight down the middle into kind of split on both sides of your head. Last little synthesizer patch for you here. This is just kind of a big fat bass sound. 3 oscillators. One is dropped down an octave, one's up an octave. Sounds like this by itself. And now I'm going to run that into some shimmer reverb on the BlueSky. So nothing crazy deep here. We didn't go into every tiny little detail of the pedal, but I wanted to just give you lots of sounds so you can get an idea of what they might sound like in your setup. So as usual, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share it, all of that good stuff. It really does help me out, and I will be back very shortly with more videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.